A few years ago, I was bought this plaque that's by the back gate of Tottington Vicarage. As you can see, it has an image of a man's pointed finger accompanied by the words "Pessimists, way out." The original is in Talbot House in the village of Popperinge in Belgium. Talbot House was established during the First World War and was inspired by two British Army chaplains. They were both Anglican priests, Philip Tubby Clayton and Neville Talbot. They came up with the idea of creating a Christian space in which those who had been serving at the front could find rest and recreation, meet and socialise together, regardless of their rank. The house was named in memory of Padre Talbot's brother, who'd been killed in July 1915. Much of the original furniture is still in the house, including the piano. The top floor of the house had originally been used for drying hops in the production of beer. This they converted into a chapel that became known as the Upper Room, and the contents are almost completely unchanged from the day it opened its doors. Visiting soldiers made their own customary contribution and fashioned altar candlesticks from bedposts and the altar from a carpenter's bench that they found in the grounds of the house. It provided, as all churches should do, a peaceful haven from the chaos and the uncertainty of the world. The men who entered this haven would have had good reason to feel pessimistic. The sights that they may have seen in the trenches around the Ypres salient would have led many to feel despondent and gloomy, constantly anticipating the worst. Amidst the most exacting of circumstances, the chaplains who ran Talbot House were determined to prevent this creeping pessimism from getting over the doorstep. They too had served in the most harrowing of conditions. These priests saw that pessimism had no use and it did no good for the human soul. So they tried to challenge the widespread tendency among soldiers of the time to see only the worst aspects of life, believing that the worst, rather than the best, will always happen. Clayton and Talbot saw very clearly that Christianity and pessimism are mutually exclusive terms because they represent completely opposite ways of looking at life. Today is the feast of Pentecost, when the Holy Spirit promised by Jesus came upon the apostles and transformed a group of somewhat frightened and uncertain men into courageous evangelists who took the message of Easter Day throughout the ancient Mediterranean world and as far as India. They found strength and they established fortitude. As Christians, we too pray that the same Holy Spirit will strengthen and sustain us, that he will touch our hearts and inspire us to do and to think what is right in God's eyes. When we celebrate the sacraments of the Church, it is also in the power of the Holy Spirit, and he reveals to us in bread and wine the Lord himself. Across the world, God the Father continues to sustain his Church by the Holy Spirit and is not limited by the human barriers of language or race. In the Acts of the Apostles, we read that men from every nation under heaven were intelligible to each other as the Holy Spirit alighted upon them. He was poured into their hearts and faith was born. In our own time as well, there are millions of Christians throughout the world from many diverse cultures who find themselves sustained by the Holy Spirit in the face of the viral flu that is affecting so much of human life. Faith is constantly being born. The Holy Spirit gives courage to our hearts when we have to wait patiently and faithfully as we find that we are having to do, and he sustains our hope and our joy. The age in which we live is not the first to find itself beset by anxiety and uncertainty, and it will certainly not be the last. The language of the Church is radical, is self-evidently countercultural, and points us all in the direction of God and to a joy and certainty that is born of the Spirit at Pentecost. This certainty is confidence in the promises of Jesus, not arrogance or a form of elitist spirituality, and is often experienced in that still and gentle voice that calms our fears. The Feast of Pentecost invites us to put our ultimate strength in God and no one else. For in him there is no place for pessimism or for fear, because he is greater than all that we know, and his love is eternal and unending. As Jesus said, "Let not your heart be troubled, nor let it be afraid. Believe in God, believe also in me." May the Holy Spirit of this Feast of Pentecost 2020 banish any hint of fear and pessimism that lurks in us, and continue to sustain us in the faith that we all share. So then, you pray for me, and I shall surely pray for you.